Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. My name is Aaron Smith. I'm the CEO of the Energy and Environmental Building Alliance, joined as always by our good friend Nancy Bakeman. And we're really pleased to have Melissa Lubitz, the business development director with Hydroloop. If you haven't learned about Hydroloop, today will be a great chance to do so. And we'll be taking questions, put them in the Q&A section or put them into the chat, and I'll ask those to Melissa. But Melissa, I think you're having some good success in changing some of the codes and doing some things, particularly in Florida and Hawaii. And I think we're
Absolutely.
keen to learn about that. But most importantly, how we can digest this into our portfolio of products as builders and architects and energy raters, water raters across the country. So, Melissa, we'll turn things over to you.
Awesome. All right. Thank you very much, Aaron. And thank you everybody for being here today. We have an hour, but I never like to take a full hour because I think 35, 40 minutes is always a good kind of taking in of the information. So let me just jump into my presentation here. Aaron, if you can just give me confirmation that we're good.
Yeah, everything looks good. I've got you spotlighted for everyone,
Perfect.
and we are ready to go.
Awesome. Great. So,
Great.
as Aaron mentioned, my name is Melissa Lubitz. I work with Hydroloop. I'm based out of North America, so I take care of both Canada and the United States as far as business development goes. And I'll have to say right from the get-go, I'm not jumping in, going to push Hydroloop, Hydroloop, Hydroloop. I'm here as an educator to talk about the technology of greywater recycling. I can speak to Grader, Leapfrog, Aqualoop, Hydroloop, whatever you're looking for. I'm on a mission, and this is what we're looking to do: is implement this technology into homes across North America. So I will jump right in. I have three screens here, and I'm always trying to find the right one. Water conservation. We hear it all the time. If you're in the industry of water, building, you're on LinkedIn, this is what you see all the time, along with water scarcity, water crisis, drought, water stress. There's an issue with water. And the US is the third largest water waste country globally. So we see this all the time, but unfortunately, what I'm finding more and more, and I'm sure other of you in this industry are finding, is water is usually the last thing that's considered when we think about building homes. And sometimes I have my moments where I'm frustrated and I'm scrolling, and I have many amazing contacts and people that I follow on LinkedIn. And they talk about, we've built this home, this net zero ready home. And I always have to put the question in there: where is the conversation about water? Are we doing everything that we possibly can to prevent this water scarcity, water crisis, water stress predicament that we're in right now? Are we being proactive instead of reactive? Conservation can be in many forms. Obviously, we all know this is not new: fixing leaks, utilizing water efficient appliances, alternating days you water a lawn, so on and so forth. But we really need to focus where we're using our water most. And that's what I said when I called myself an educator rather than a salesperson. I was at the Next Generation Water Summit in New Mexico, I believe it was last June. And they told us that their study was done where they took students and they had them wander the streets of San Francisco asking people, what can you live without more? Water or energy? 95% of people said energy. And that to me it's heartbreaking because there's so much that we can do. So what we need to do is target one of the highest areas of water waste that we need to consider for the future design of a home. So this graph on the right, we've all seen it before. Where do we use the water most in our home? Flushing the toilets. And what do we flush our toilets with? We flush it with potable water. What we need to do is target that mass waste of our clean, pure water and start to close the loop. So toilet flushing consumes 25 to 30% depending on the home. A dripping faucet can waste up to 500 gallons per month. A leaky flapper on a toilet can fill an average size swimming pool 4 times in less than a year. All these things we need to take in consideration when we're talking about water conservation. So when I say water conservation from coast to coast with a question mark, what I'm getting at is, are we doing everything we can across? And I'm just focusing right now on the United States. Obviously, Canada has their things that they need to work on as well. And as someone in the organization of water treatment, All the time. You must, California, Arizona, Colorado, all those must be the places where you're selling these devices the most. Places like Hawaii, on an island in the middle of the Pacific, those must be the areas that you're getting the most business. Well, most Western states, they do have well-established central water reuse systems in operation with full state appeal, which is amazing, which is so encouraging. This is not something that they're doing in Canada at this point in time. But one thing we need to look at is centralized water reuse treatment systems. They can treat up to a maximum of 50 to 80% of the gray water. We've all heard of purple pipe. You drive around Florida, you see irrigation happening. This is a purple pipe system. Please don't expose yourself to this water. This is centralized water reuse treatment system, which is amazing. And this reusable water supply is used for mostly industrial and outdoor irrigation. But what happens with the other 20 to 50% of gray water? Consider states like Florida, that's growing almost 1,500 people per day. Do they really have the infrastructure that's set up with the purple pipe for all those new developments? But then also let's consider the homes where the infrastructure hasn't been set up. Let's capture that water. Let's treat that water and use it right where we have it. An interesting bit of information I learned once is that 4.5%, and it could have raised by now, of the world's energy is used in the water sector. So if we're taking gray water and we're sending it to another facility and we're treating it and using energy and sending it back, we want to lower our carbon footprint. We want to cut back on that amount of energy by using a decentralized gray water recycling system. We're able to do that at home. We can capture that remaining 20 to 50% of gray water and treat it right where we use it in our home. So decentralized gray water recycling, you can potentially save a home 25 to 45% of potable water use. And this is amazing. But on the other end of the scale, whatever you don't have to bring into a home, you don't have to, doesn't have to leave the home. So I live in just outside of Toronto. So my province is Ontario. And when I'm speaking to developers, what they're more interested in is the wastewater production. Because all the new development we have here, our wastewater treatment plants cannot handle the volume. It's going to come where drinking water is the bigger concern, but it's all wrapped up into one. We're saving what's coming in and we're saving what's going out. And when you look at that, we're saving on the amount of energy that we're having to use in the water sector. So when I'm talking about gray water recycling, this is always a big question mark as well. What water is that? So the first thing I'm going to do is tell you what's ruled out. And I'm sure all of you already know this, but obviously black water. Black water would be toilets. But something that people are surprised about is black water is also anything from the kitchen, anything from a dishwasher, a floor drain. What we're focused on with gray water is bath and shower. Potentially, depending on what the homeowner is looking for, we can also treat gray water from a washing machine. Depending on what climate you're in, we can also take in condensation from air conditioning. All of that can be treated to then be used for non-potable uses in the home. Toilet flushing, back into the washing machine, and for outdoor irrigation. All of these things we can use by taking the water that we're using in our home, treating it, and being able to keep it in that space and reuse it. Obviously, the plumbing configuration is going to need to change. So how the gray water is directed to the device and then how we're moving the water to all of our non-potable sources. Ideally, you would like this to be appliance-like. From the Hydroloop sense of things, we didn't want anything that had to be buried in the ground. We didn't want anything, we wanted something that was very simple. Appliance can plug into the wall, connected to a waste drain, and then we have all the plumbing configuration set up. So there's, depending on who I'm talking about, and the goal, as I said, is the same for all gray water manufacturers. We're looking to treat the water to a level where it's safe to be used in the home. And there's various different ways to do that. And I'll touch on that a little bit. But a big thing you want to make sure is that you have some kind of third-party certification that's been proven, and local municipal guidelines are acceptant of that. So this is a typical drawing that we'll discuss with customers. Can you use gray water recycling for existing homes? Sure you can. Is it the most cost-effective and efficient way to use that? Probably not. Unless someone's doing a major renovation, they're ripping everything out and starting new, which we've had a lot of customers do that. What we're gearing these towards is new builds. My wish within the next 5 years is to have homes built what we call recycle ready, that the plumbing configuration is ready, it's set up, not necessarily that there's a graywater recycling system in there. That's going to take time for it to be mandated, but as long as we're ready when the time comes. So what that means is making sure that your graywater lines are all being directed to one central location where a device can be installed, and that there's plumbing to be configured for where your reusable water, which is your treated graywater, where that is going to be directed to. This is what our goal is as a graywater manufacturer in the coming years. So the treatment process, obviously this is a hydroloop system that you're seeing on the right here, but regardless of who you're using, we're all looking towards the same goal. We want to capture any hair, any sediment, any larger particles that's going to be in the water. We want to remove that from the water. This can be done through filtration, foam fractionation, which is what hydroloop uses, or actually by gravity when you're collecting any larger particles that fall out of solution. Membrane filtration can also be used for a final filtration for particles that are too small to tackle, a bioreactor, so an MBBR, ozone, UV disinfection, chlorination. All of these things are imperative in order to get that water to a state where we can use it in the home. And what we're gearing up with treatment, and it doesn't matter what you're talking about, whether it be drinking water, whether it be wastewater, stormwater, graywater, you're trying to prepare that water so it's clear enough to be able to be hit with some type of disinfectant to remove all the bacteria. So in a hydroloop system, we're using UV disinfection as our last step in treatment, but you can use chlorination, ozone. There's a myriad of different ways you can disinfect your water. But what we're looking to do is get it to a point where it's clear, there's no odors, there's nothing in the water, and then we can pass it through our level of disinfection in order to make sure that there's no microbiological activity going on in the water. So once we've passed through all these steps of treatment, then we can move it to wherever we want to move it, whether it be to flush toilets. We can put it back into the washing machine, as I mentioned, or we can direct it to a rain barrel outdoors. With graywater, you don't want to be connecting it up to any kind of spray irrigation. This is type of water you don't want people to be taking in or breathing or having it come into human contact. Drip irrigation and for rain barrel is what reusable water is recommended for. So what are the barriers that we're facing? As I said in the beginning, I'm more of an educator than a salesperson. We go into states, municipalities, speak to regulators that are not aware of what graywater recycling, decentralized graywater recycling devices can do, how much they can actually save. The average home between 10 to 15,000 gallons of potable water usage every year. Whatever doesn't have to come in doesn't have to go out. So that's the biggest thing, is getting the message out, speaking, talking at as many events as I can. Regardless if anyone ever buys any devices, we need to get the message out because this is something we need to be proactive on. The cost. Graywater recycling is not yet mandated in North America. So this technology is added cost to the home. Builders have a hard time with the cost of the equipment, changing the piping configuration. All this comes off their bottom line. So what I'm trying to do, my next challenge, is to get into as many states as possible and talk about what we can do as far as incentivizing this type of equipment. So this can be something that is built into every single home across North America. Unfortunately, there are some states who view water reuse, or excuse me, drinking water as revenue. So Arizona has a long history of centralized water reuse for irrigation, industrial cooling, and groundwater recharge, which is amazing. And in 2023, the state issued a bill allowing for water reuse inside the home, so for toilet flushing only. However, when we've gone to Phoenix and said, we're looking to fund a pilot to work with you, unfortunately, they're saying, but that's going to cause the user to buy less drinking water, and that's going to come off our bottom line. So unfortunately, that's another barrier that we're running up against. And plumbing configuration design. A lot of these homes, they've been built for many years. This is the design they've used, and changing it is something that they're not comfortable with. There is about a 5 to 10% additional plumbing cost due to the additional piping that's needed. And unfortunately, builders, they're uncomfortable with making the change. So this is something we really have to push and make it part of the norm. So now I want to get into the important part of what I want to talk about today is states that are offering incentives for decentralized graywater recycling. I spend a lot of time in Florida. The state of Florida is growing exponentially. As I mentioned before, I have 1,100 people here. I just learned at the Builder Innovator Conference that it's more than like 1,500 people per day that are moving to the state. So obviously, when a state is growing so rapidly, their water resources are depleting at the same rate. So they're facing these water shortages because Florida gets their main supply of water from an aquifer. As the aquifer depletes, their concern is saltwater intrusion. So they have to keep injecting that aquifer with treated wastewater in order to keep that from happening. So what Florida has done is they've started to offer tax incentives for graywater recycling devices as part of its broader effort to promote water conservation and sustainability, which is amazing. So let's start in Monroe County, all the way down in the Keys. They have something called a ROGO point system. So they regulate building permits for new residential and commercial developments. By implementing graywater recycling into your design, that adds 2 points to your permits. Now, they only have a certain number of permits that they offer every quarter. And you can actually buy these points if you wanted to, but they can range between $25,000 to $70,000. So this is huge that they're doing this in Monroe County. In January 2024, Senate Bill SB 358 for single-family new construction was introduced. This is a tax credit that's being issued for the installation of graywater recycling devices in a residential application. So I'm Joe Home Builder. I'm building a home for Mr. Smith, and I'm going to put a graywater recycling device in there. I buy that from Hydroloop, let's say for $4,200. The state will give Joe Home Builder $2,100 in a tax credit for purchasing that device. So there's a $2 million cap per builder, but this does expire on January 1st of 2027. I would think the most important one in Florida is the density allocation. So under Senate Bill SB 64 for single family and multifamily, builders and developers can receive a density bonus up to 35% for installing graywater recycling devices into their developments. So we have 3 projects on the go right now with a multi-residential builder who has received his building permits for all 3 builds, and he's adding 35% more units in his builds because they are putting in a graywater recycling system for the entire building. So this is setting Florida above other states as far as pushing this, the momentum of water sustainability. Now, from this exciting announcement and everything that's going on in Florida, we have a big partner in the state of Hawaii, which we were speaking to them about. And our partner decided to, working with IAPMO, draft a bill to put in front of the Hawaiian Senate. So this bill, SB 547, was created to encourage the installation of graywater recycling. So they also, it's gone through 2 of its readings and been approved. It has 1 more reading, and then it will, this incentive will also be implemented within the state of Hawaii when buildings are implementing graywater recycling. So that's that I'm 2 down. I've 48 to go. But then I've just learned in the last couple months that Austin, Texas also does offer on-site water reuse systems are required for their new commercial multifamily and mixed-use projects with 250,000 square feet of gross floor area. So they will, under the OWRS pilot incentive program, Austin will pay up to $500,000 per qualifying project when graywater recycling is implemented into the project. So you can see that the momentum is slowly building from state to state. We have a lot of work to do, though. Now, with pilot projects, which is a lot of what we're doing across North America, you need data. You can have a device that you install, and yes, I'm saving gray water, but a lot of the times, and I'm working with a lot of municipalities that have bought devices directly from Hydroloop, put them in, working with builders, they've actually installed them. What they want to see is how much water is going to be saved from home to home compared to homes that don't have gray water recycling. And from that, they can then create their new water bill and put in incentives for builders when they're implementing greywater recycling. So every single one of our devices is connected to Wi-Fi. We can record all things that are going on with the device, how much water saved, how much downtime, et cetera, et cetera. All of this can be, let's say I click on any one of these dots, that could be a hydroloop system, and you're going to bring up this chart here, and you're going to be able to see exactly what's going on with the device. But if you look at this bottom bar graph, you're going to see the most important part of information from this device. This is how much water is being saved, could be per day, could be per month, and the volume you can see is along the y-axis. This to me is key because let's say, for example, there's a region just outside my hometown, region of Waterloo. They can then look at this and say, on average, the 4 homes that we've got these devices installed in are saving, let's say, 15,000 gallons per year, which is in and around, I think, 40,000 liters. If we were to build 100 of these, let's do the math and look at how much water as well as wastewater we'll be using and producing in that development. So we're finding that this kind of information is really key to push the envelope, to move things forward, to speak to regulators and go into municipalities and say, this is why we need to offer incentives to builders and developers to encourage them to consider water conservation within the home. Getting the homeowners involved. Now, I know I always say this in these presentations and I say, oh, we have an app, and everybody rolls their eyes and says, oh God, an app. And it's so true because everything has an app. We can lump them together with a central app with other things that are going on in the home. But the main reason for this, how did we all start recycling? We learned in school, don't put glass in the garbage can. We came home, we harassed the hell out of our parents not to put that in the garbage can. And this is how things kind of took momentum. We want to get these devices in a high school. We want it behind glass. We want a monitor that says, this is how much water you're saving. We need this to be the norm. And by having this, having the homeowner with the app in their hand, and in the morning they get a ding and it says, congratulations, yesterday you saved 60 gallons of potable water use. And the app starts to make suggestions. We notice you're doing your laundry in the morning. What about if everyone's showering in the morning and you do your laundry in the evening and use recycled gray water for your laundry? It's just trying to have the homeowner be cognizant of how they're using their water, when they're using it, and the hydroloop is helping them along. Hey, I've got a full tank of reusable water. Why don't you open up your app and send this water out to your rain barrel? And then it can keep recycling. So I really believe that getting the homeowner involved, getting our children involved to think about when we turn on the tap, it's not always a given. Certification is one of the most important things, I believe, for a product. I've worked in the drinking water area for many, many years. And if something doesn't have a stamp of approval saying we have tested this, at the end of the day, it's basically lighting a pipe. You don't know if it's actually working. So you need to have some kind of third-party certification. Within North America, NSF, of course, NSF has a water reuse standard. It's called NSF 350. And they actually take your device, they put it on stand like it would be in the home. They're actually running gray water through your system, but this is actually synthetically made gray water. So they're taking, laundry soap, they're taking shampoo, shaving cream, toothpaste, all of these things they're mixing. And then they go to the local wastewater treatment plant and they grab a sample of raw wastewater and they add it to the mix. And what they're doing is they're running this through your device for 26 weeks. 6-month period, and they're measuring your effluent, and you have to meet the levels of water quality parameters that they've outlined. So NSF 350 is very important with regards to gray water recycling. Electrical certification, obviously very important. One thing we're very happy about is under the IPC and the UPC plumbing code, if water reuse is being used, and that's the plumbing code that your state is following, if it has NSF 350 approval, it is accepted. So what does a home or commercial installation look like? This is specifically for Hydrolube, obviously, but there's many different configurations you can do, whether it just be a single family home. You can see on the far left, this is in a garage. Depending on the climate, you can definitely install this in the garage. Can't be below 5 degrees Celsius due to the bioreactor we have in the system. But we also can do hotels, multi-residential application. You can see on the far right here, this is a campground. So what we're doing is we're packaging a system, a cascade of devices in a container. We're pulling the gray water of the showers out of the rest station in the campground, treating it, and then using that water either back into the rest station for the toilet flushing or then using it for irrigation. So there's many different configurations that you can do. We do have a hotel in Belgium. It's an IHG hotel where they're only collecting 3 floors of their gray water from the rooms, brings it down to the central mechanical room. They treat it in their cascade. And then the first floor of the hotel is a convention center. They have hundreds of toilets on that first floor. All that reusable water is being used to flush toilets on that first floor. So there's a myriad of ways that you can set up your equipment. I get this question all the time where people say, Melissa, how much water can your device save? And my same response is always, how long is a piece of string? I don't know. How many people live there? How many bathrooms? Where do you want to use your water from? Do you have teenagers in the home? Do you have a baby? They are having a bath every night. All of these things, all these questions that we ask when we're looking at a certain application. So, for example, this home is I don't know why they have 3.3, maybe, I don't even want to know. But on average, 12,000 gallons in 2022 is what they saved of potable water. So this is significant, and their installation cost was 4,600 euros. But then you can get to larger applications. One of our first cascades is when we're taking multiple devices, so it can cascade one into another, depending on the volume that you need, where we're saving around 350,000 gallons per year of potable water use in this multi-residential building. So many different ways to configure it, many different ways to save water. And with that, that is all I have for today. Like I said, I like to keep it short and sweet. I don't want to bombard anyone with information, but I am very happy to answer any questions anyone might have.
Yeah, great. I see we have Jonah Shine from EPA on. Jonah, if you want to come on camera, you're more than welcome to. But it's great to have you. Jonah is the water efficiency expert from the U.S. EPA. I have a couple questions that came up as we went through, Melissa. Uh, One is I'm sure you know about super availability charges, but a lot of us see what's called a SAC charge for interconnecting new buildings with a sewer system that, I mean, my take on it, keeping it simple, Melissa, is that the sewer system will need to be expanded or there's some future growth or big spend. Have you
Mhm.
had any success with Hydroloop about offsetting the SAC charge for a new residence by the decrease in wastewater going back into the system?
Yeah, when a couple of applications that I've talked about in Ontario, been kind of batted around, but there's nothing official that I've actually seen. But that's interesting. That's something for definitely for me to really push in the US for sure.
Yeah, I think my town has between the county and the city, it's like $5,100 US per home on the SAC charge. So
Okay.
that could be a case. Uh, so what type of, it's great to see some cities like or some states like Hawaii and Florida and a city like Austin doing something, but where do you see the best adoption? And maybe it's not just in North America, it's globally. And how can we oh, Jonah, I'll invite you. I have to make you a host. So if you're up for it, I'm gonna allow camera and I'm gonna allow mic. And so we'll finish up with that question. And then we've got Jonah. Hey, Jonah, how are you, man?
Hi, Jonah.
Great to see you. Jonah and Melissa, I think you
So
know each other
we
well.
do. I'm not here to crash the presentation, but if I can help at all,
No,
Yeah.
happy to
appreciate
add
it.
anything I can.
Yeah, always great
This is
to
learning
have
for
you.
me too, because when there's more people and people bring information to the table, I'm not an expert by any means when it comes to everything outside of the Hydraloop.
Yeah, well, maybe I'll finish with my question, then Jonah, I can open it up to you. But where are you seeing the best success or the best adoption, Melissa? You know,
Um, is initially when we first started, I would say California.
okay.
There was a lot of interest in California, but we've seen a lot of pushback. There's a lot of things going on right now in California, especially with the changing of with the Blue Ribbon Commission, and looking into making some changes to the NSF certification, specifically on multi-res types applications. But it's really petered off, I find, in California. We're really seeing a big spike in Oregon and obviously Florida. Florida
Mm,
is a huge market right now. But much to the surprise of Hydraloop, which is a European company, they're based out of the
mm,
Netherlands, we're selling more in Canada than we
mm,
are in the United States. We are finding if you have one province where they're open to it, and we've had some installations with lots of success. The other provinces, as soon as they learn of that, they're like, "Great, fantastic, bring it in."
mhm.
So that was a surprise, I think, to Hydraloop when that started happening. Which, I mean, yay, Canada, that's fantastic. I'm
Yeah,
excited. So British
yeah,
Columbia and Ontario are the two biggest
two
provinces, I
best.
would say. Yeah, for
That's
sure.
great. Jonah, questions or comments around this important topic?
Yeah, no, I mean, I would add to what Melissa said a little bit in that, obviously Hydraloop is a decentralized gray
Yeah.
water solution. We also have lots of communities that are, pushing and practicing centralized gray water solutions. And that honestly, and just in personal experience, that might be why you're seeing things sort of level off a little bit in California,
Yeah.
because so many of the systems there are investing in
Mhm,
community systems. And look, I mean, in this case, water is comparable to energy, right? We
mhm,
need the grid solutions, but we also love decentralized solutions
Yep.
mhm.
and everything. So yeah, sometimes it takes people a little bit of time to figure out that balance and figure out where one solution beneficial to another. Obviously, they both have their virtues. Um,
Yeah. Well, as
Yeah,
long
and
as we
you know
have,
what? Aaron and I were speaking about this before everything started, is that a lot of these conferences and summits, I don't ever expect there to be there and right now sales orders. This is education, and this is, I mean, I came from the UV disinfection industry, residential, and yeah, it's new, it's slow moving, so absolutely, I 100% agree with you. It's going to take some time.
yeah. Uh, Melissa, I love what you said about do we think about the carbon impact? And Jonah, your team had done a lot of work and came up with kind of a calculator of the impacts. And what we forget is, I always like that, what the energy, water, food nexus idea. But I think what we forget is how much pumping energy we use to deliver 1 gallon of fresh water to our home, depending on the state. Jonah, do you want to comment on that a little bit?
yeah, no, and, and as you said, we've done some work on that, and we've tried to put those tools out to our partners. I think we've even been on EVA's webinars in the past, sharing information about that. But it's important that we take that all into consideration when we have this debate about what the best solution is, right? We're generating gray water on site. We have potential uses for it at that exact same site. Um, the other, and again, this is not meant to detract from the potential of using gray water outdoors for irrigation. But one of the nice things I always find when you're using it for solutions like flushing toilets is, well, it's not a 100% rule, but chances are if you're using showers and you're using sinks and you're generating gray water, that tends to pair up pretty well with when you might need to be flushing toilets as well, right? They're very naturally correlated. It might not be 100% rule. You're going to shower at the gym sometimes. You're going to have a party where, I guess it depends what kind of parties you go to. But when I have a party, there's a lot of flushing the toilet and not so much showering. Um, as opposed to say like rainwater catchment, which again, perfectly viable technology. But if we're going to use that outdoors, we might not have the rainwater available right when we need
Mhm.
it for outdoor water use. So it does have this sort of very nice correlation. And
Hmm.
hey, if that exists, rather than putting, don't forget we pump wastewater as well.
Hmm.
It's not just
Hmm.
drinking water. Why
Yeah.
pump it out to the treatment plant where we're going to spend more energy there treating it, and then spend pumping energy to bring it back? In addition to all of that new pipe that we had to lay it again, you start to see you really do start to see the case for decentralized solutions here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Uh, One question came in, Melissa. It said you mentioned your system results in a 10 to 15% increase in plumbing costs from piping, and that would be adding the purple pipe into the system, plumbing just a little bit differently. Has Hydroloop evaluated whether piping savings offered by IAPMO's water demand calculator can offset the increase in piping costs to support dual piping?
No, but I would definitely like to learn more about that. That's very interesting. And it's hard to say when I've talked to plumbers here in Ontario and they say 5% increase and then in California. So it really depends on where you are. But yeah, if there is something, I'd love to take a lot of the excuses out of the conversation if I possibly can. So yes, if there is information that anyone has that can pass on, that would be amazing.
Sure. Great. And that was Robert Pickering. Robert, if you want to reach out to Melissa on that, that would be
Thank you,
great.
Robert. Appreciate that.
Um, Melissa, Paul Sambanis says San Francisco also has a similar regulation to Austin, Texas.
On the yes, on the and you know what? When I was piecing this together,
Yeah.
Austin was like Texas was the first one. The first time I'd seen a rebate come out of that area. But I know in different areas of California they might have $200, $300 here on the decentralized on the
Mhm.
smaller systems. But yeah, on the multi-res, I don't know. I do know there's certain areas where they do offer something. I'm finding. I guess I didn't bring it up because it's the requests for systems on the multi-res side
Mhm.
in California has not been we haven't had a lot, to be honest with you.
Mhm.
Like I said, California is quiet. I would say
Mhm.
multi-res for Hydroloop anyway. It might be a success for other gray water manufacturers, but that's what we're finding. And a lot of the times too, I mean, we're not afraid to say we're not a 50 floor building like answer to your question. We have a
Sure.
ceiling. There's a niche market for us, and I will absolutely say, you know what, you need to call Epic Clean Tech for that. They are the ones for this building
Yeah.
because then that is their forte. I am not afraid to say that. So maybe that's why we're not seeing as much because they're much larger buildings in the California different areas.
Sure. Sure. Um, Jonah, any thoughts on other localities or states that this type of we're starting to see some uptake?
Yeah, I mean, it really is a patchwork.
Mhm.
It's difficult to wrap your head around it. Aaron probably knows this because I've emphasized it before, but if we expect these incentives to come from water utilities, there's an order of magnitude more water
Yeah,
utilities in
that's
this
right.
country than energy utilities,
Yeah.
Yes.
um, more than in one order. And so it's just really hard to keep track of them. We struggle with this. It doesn't surprise me to hear, Melissa, that you struggle with it. And we can sort of put this list together of ones that we're familiar, and then someone will come into the chat with one we hadn't,
Yeah.
that we hadn't.
Hmm.
Yeah, and that's exactly
I
what I'm
know.
seeing. Yeah, because Hydroloop's European, so you can track the different European countries with all their incentives. It's when I talk about North America, it's a large space, so it is
Mhm.
it is not easy to stay on top of all of them at all times.
Well,
Yeah.
having sold purple pipe in a previous life, Melissa, I mean, I definitely can commiserate with you because it is just a patchwork of different plumbing authorities across,
Yeah.
and some are in some municipalities it seems like it's still 1920, and in others it's 2025. So
Yeah.
it's just a
Yeah.
lot of fights out there. Melissa, one other question. Is there any incentive, is there a financial incentive to usage charges? So I think we're seeing some municipalities say, hey, the first X gallons of water is at the base rate, and then Y is at this rate, and Z is at that rate. Um, with the kind of savings that I think you can see on even an individual house with 3.3 residents, uh, what is there enough of a savings there on cities where there is a kind of usage charge happening?
Yeah. Yeah, well, we do have an application in Pacifica, California, where exactly that.
Mhm.
This is a residential home, and the wonderful people, and she actually cleans dance costumes for a theater, and they were going through an astronomical amount of water. So they were at a tier 4 level of their
Mhm.
of the water bill, so which was in around $350, and this was probably about 6 years ago, 5 years ago. They put it in Hydroloop, and they were down to a tier 1, down to under $100. So beautiful ROI. So definitely that can work, but it's going to depend on where you are. Obviously, in that area, the water pricing is very high, and they're using a lot of water. But the ROI is not as lovely a conversation as we like it to be. You're probably looking at around an 7 to 8 year ROI on one of these devices, depending on how water pricing is going to go, which we don't know.
Right. Great. Um, Jonah, any final thoughts or questions? Otherwise, I think oh, go ahead, Jonah.
No, I would say, Melissa, I think it's a great point. We've discovered this with water efficiency. It's a trend, right? People are
Yeah.
moving to sort of an inclining block pricing structure as a general rule. There's as many rate schemes out there as there are water utilities.
Yeah.
And as I said, there's a whole lot of water utilities.
That's right.
But yeah, I mean, like I said, we are moving. People are moving increasingly to the increasing block, and when that's the case, the water you're saving is the most expensive water, right? You're taking it off the top of that,
Yeah.
tier, not off the bottom. I've spent a large part of the last 18 months trying to educate energy raters on how to look at a water rate schedule and interpret that, and it hasn't been going great, but we'll persevere because, like I said, you have to make sure that you're capturing the full benefit, and that
Yeah.
full benefit is at the top of that tier.
I like
Great.
that word, persevere. That's part of my vocabulary on a daily basis. So I appreciate that, John.
Yeah. Well, and I think to kind of finish things up, Melissa, if you can reiterate, I mean, I totally agree that you need pilot projects and you need them far and wide, and you need to kind of plant the flag in different markets. And whether it's the water utility seeing it, or legislators seeing it, or the plumbing board seeing it, or the
Yeah.
water utility seeing it. So, I'm Melissa. I think there's a big interest. Can you just reiterate that for everybody and how to reach out to you and Hydroloop?
Absolutely. Yeah. Any information that anybody has that they can share with me. And like I said, I speak with these forums more so for me to learn from all of you. So yeah, you can definitely reach out to me. It's just melissa.lubitz at hydroloop.com. And I would, share any questions or any information you want to pass on. That greatly appreciated. I think we're all in this together, whether you're, like me and looking to save water, but also you have in the bigger pictures, developers, builders, etc. I think it's something we all need to work together on, for sure.
Amen. Melissa, thank you so much for
My
speaking
pleasure,
today.
Aaron.
Jonah, thanks for being our special guest today. I had to
Good
take
talking to
advantage
you,
of you
Jonah.
being in the audience. Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
you
And
as well.
thanks.
I'm glad it worked out. Thanks for letting me crash.
You bet. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good day. Thanks,
Yeah,
Aaron.
bye.